What's going on, guys? My name is Jake, and with me, as always, Bryce Gardner.
What's going on?
Welcome to the weekly Next Level X Soulscast. And boy, are we starting out with a bang on the first episode.
That's right.
So basically, just to kind of fill you guys in, the podcast going to be striving to bring it to you weekly. We dealt with some technical issues last week. Recorded an episode, ran into some issues.
Basically, our recording got messed up.
Yeah, we're making the best of it. So
learning process.
Yeah, definitely learning process. But basically, this is going to be a weekly Dark Souls podcast where we talk about everything from, PvP metagame mechanics to in-depth lore, speculation,
to speedruns,
to whatever's really going on in the Souls community. So that's going to be the whole focus of the podcast. And for today's episode, we are going to talk about Dark Souls 3, a little game coming out pretty soon. You might have heard of.
Yeah, that's right.
So basically, what had happened was...
Yeah, last week we sat down, we tried to record our first podcast, and even though we had some technical difficulties, we had been agonizing over the fact that, hey, we have 4 days scheduled off for the release of Dark Souls 3.
April 12th.
Yes.
April 12th.
But there's these people who are playing the game because of the loophole with Xbox One, or playing it on the Japanese version, or all these famous YouTubers and streamers.
Just to clarify, because it's common knowledge to us, but some people might not have known, on Xbox One you could buy the Japanese version of the game from Japan using yen. It was super complicated and in-depth process. But then basically when it starts downloading on your Xbox, you cancel the download and you restart it and you reset your region to the US and it downloads the English version for you.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's 100% the whole game. It's there.
There's just no online play for the Xbox One.
Yeah, version. there's no connectivity right now.
If you play on PS4 in Japanese, you can play online. You can play with all the people from Japan, and you have the whole access to everything. But it's all in Japanese.
Yep. So kind of going from there, basically what ended up happening was, at the end of the podcast that we were shooting last week, we ultimately decided that we were going to both go out and buy Xbox Ones.
We had been agonizing over it for 4 or 5 days.
Well, the thing was, my struggle is that, we're really excited for this game, and we scheduled these days off. We're doing all this stuff. We have these plans. But so many people were playing the game that it's I can't even get online without having immense things ruined for me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Or just the fear, I didn't really have too much ruined for me, but it was I felt like I couldn't get on Reddit. I felt like I couldn't get on YouTube.
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't even go to IGN's website, without things being ruined for me. And I think one of the most beautiful things about the whole series is being able to sit down and get that first playthrough where you don't know shit about the game.
Yep.
And it's just
and
everything's new. You pick up an item and you're like, holy cow, that's in this game, or
and
whatever.
you only get one of those. You know what I mean? We play these games for years on end, and we, the community tears them apart, finds everything, analyzes everything. But when,
reanalyzes everything.
Yeah, and it's you only get one first blind playthrough. And so it was pretty important for us to have that. So ultimately, getting down to business, we've been playing Dark Souls 3 for the past week.
Yep.
Pretty much nonstop. I mean, not nonstop, but a lot. We've been playing it a lot.
The first night, it was roughly, I think, 7:45.
I think we almost played for almost 12 hours.
Yeah, we got super excited. We finally realized, at the end, we were we're gonna go buy Xbox Ones. We're gonna do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so we go to GameStop. You traded in your Xbox 360 that you've had for years. We buy it. We come home, spend an hour and a half figuring out how to do the Japanese download.
That
it
was wild.
It was a little weird just because it was it was a little buggy. And the whole time your heart's just racing because you're like, oh, this isn't going to work. I just bought an Xbox One for no reason,
Yep.
And then we got it to work.
So yeah, we got it to work. We've had Dark Souls 3, so...
And we started playing probably 9:30 and didn't stop until about 9:30 a.m.
Yep.
We had a giant bag of Taco Bell in the fridge, and we just went in.
We just went in pretty hard.
Yeah.
Really, really fun. So basically for this episode, we're going to give our spoiler-free impressions.
2 segments. essentially.
The first segment's going to be spoiler-free impressions.
Yeah.
We both pretty much beaten the game. I'm still on the last boss right now.
I've got one boss left, and I think you have 2 bosses left.
And I have 2 bosses left, and
I beat the last boss.
But that's not to say that we've done everything there is to do in the game.
Yeah,
like
hardly.
There's still just on my first playthrough, it makes me realize just how dense these games are.
Yeah,
where
they definitely didn't cut away from their formula as far as that goes.
No, so just getting right into it. That might be one of the first things I notice is that like as I'm playing through the game, I'm noticing like, this isn't happening for me. I feel like this NPC would be saying something, but they're not, or this or that, and you can just kind of tell that like decisions you're making along the way definitely like greatly impact your game, and that's typical of the series. But
and it seemed to be very dynamic, and we're not gonna get into any spoilers if you're watching this and you're worried that we're gonna slip up.
We're not gonna spoil anything, but in the second half of this podcast, we're gonna move into spoiler territory and discuss everything.
And we'll give you guys who don't want any of that a break.
But yeah, we'll let you know before that's gonna happen. Yeah. But the cool thing about the NPCs and the things that I feel like the things that were happening for me and the things that weren't happening for me, the thing that I thought was really cool, the thing that I liked a lot was the fact that it wasn't like, oh, there's more to do here, there's different things that can happen. It was the fact that like when I would notice that, it would make me excited for my next playthrough, because I was like, man, I want to do this differently and see how this plays out. And like it didn't seem like, oh, like I'm mad because I didn't get this to happen or this happened. It's like, oh no, this happened and I can't wait to see what else.
It was like when I beat Bloodborne and you were like, did you ever go to Canehurst? And I was like, no, what are you talking about?
Canehurst?
And then, I find out I missed this whole zone, and it's like, oh, I gotta play through again, you know? And there's definitely a lot of that in this game, and I think that a lot of people are still it's gonna take some time to get it all fleshed out, for sure.
Yeah. But, so, standout things, non-spoilery.
The game's great, by the way.
The game's great.
It is beautiful.
It's amazing.
Like, the best way that I can describe it myself, spoiler-free, is I think a lot of people who like video games are probably Star Wars fans, and what they did with this game is the same thing as it's like, here's Dark Souls 1 and here's Dark Souls 3, and then you have Star Wars Episode 1 and you have Star Wars Episode 7. Like, they made something for the fans.
You don't mean Episode 1. You're gonna get people mad. You're gonna get people mad.
Yeah, that's true.
People are gonna destroy.
Well, I got thinking Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3.
No. Original.
Yeah.
Original trilogy we're talking about here.
Episode 4 and Episode
Basically,
7.
what you're saying is they made it for the fans.
They made a game for the fans. They knew what we wanted, and they did not fail to deliver. Yeah, they
delivered on it for sure.
If you're even questioning if you should buy the game, buy it. You will not regret it.
Now, that's not to say, like, I think the game's phenomenal. I'm enjoying it immensely. I do have some gripes with the game.
Yeah.
There are certain things where it's like I'm not going to say it's a flawless game. Like, there are certain things that I've gotten out of, like, previous Dark Souls games that this game isn't quite hitting the same notes for me on. But it's not, like, big enough things that it's really impacting my experience in a super negative way.
I feel that. I know what you mean.
And a lot of that has to do with like NPCs and like dialogues and like things like that. Like there are certain NPCs that you'll talk to. Not gonna name names or anything, but
this is a sketchy little ground.
Certain people you talk to, like some of their dialogues are just dumb. Like sometimes they just say that they'll like ramble on, and they'll say all this stuff, and it's like, why are you? It's like almost like they're spelling out how the mechanics of the game work, like too blatantly, like to a point where it's like you are beating a dead horse, sir.
The lore is definitely in your face a little bit more in this game than it is in other ones.
That was the other thing. The lore is very like upfront, but like. What I was wondering is, I don't know if the lore is actually super straightforward this time, or if I'm just more aware now than I was in previous games. After years of playing Dark Souls games, and it's like, oh, like that's definitely a statue of whoever, and it's like things just jump out at you more, and like maybe that's how it was for people who were like playing Dark Souls 1 for years and years before we both
played DS2 first.
Yeah. Well, I played Dark Souls 1 we completed DS2 first and then went back to play Dark Souls 1.
Yeah, I played like 2 hours of Dark Souls 1 and was like, this game's not for me. It's like, I was like, I have to kill all these enemies every time. I can't deal with this. Yeah. They don't give me shit for experience. I gotta kill like 100 of them just to level up. Like, it was just going about it in such the wrong way, you know?
But so, anyways, things that are like new to the game, things new to Dark Souls that I really like a lot in Dark Souls 3. Battle arts, I think, were done really well.
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying that whole system, and I think it adds a
lot of quality of life changes that really just make every button press more impactful. You have a lot more options, and it does not make the game easier in any way.
No, it just gives you more. But choices
exactly
to make and how you play your character, and like there are even things like certain you can either focus on, because you're basically, when you use battle arts, it uses up some stamina and some mana, right?
Yeah.
So you have your mana bar, and then so maybe you're like a heavy weapons user, like strength build, so you're never going to use spells really, but you're going to use
your mana bar is still important.
But so your mana bar is still important.
It's so much different than like, you look at Demon Souls and you have this mana bar, and if you're not using spells, that mana bar just sits there and goes, it's useless all game.
Yeah.
It's like, why do I even have this?
Yeah.
And like even like simple things, there's just so many weapon arts in the game that it's like you will find a way to use that mana. And it becomes very natural.
And not only will you find a way to use it, like you will be searching for a way to beat something, or like you'll be like trying to call on every ability you have in the game.
You're scanning through your inventory. What do I do?
Like, what do I do to beat this? Because like, I'll say this right now, I think that Dark Souls 3 is the hardest Souls game that has been released to date.
And I will say that a decent amount of that has to do with one thing more than anything else, and it's just From has improved on their AI. Yeah. Like, in general, even the simplest enemies, they are more intelligent. Now, I'm not saying they're geniuses. You can still cheese certain things, you know what I mean? Like, terrain is still useful, all that kind of stuff, but the enemies have gotten much smarter. I don't know if they're just less hollow or what, but I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's 2016.
They got some smarts on them. I almost wonder if it's just from years of From, like obviously they're very involved in their community. Yeah. They know that the Souls community is very like active. It's like almost a part of the game. Like it's a very community driven game. If you have ever tried to play a Souls game and you're just like, the people who get frustrated and like put it down, they're like, I can't play this, are the people who don't know how to use the internet, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like go search for like answers to everything and like on your first playthrough, but if you're stuck, like,
and you can't figure it out.
Souls is meant to be like almost a collaborative thing. And
I got stuck a few times.
And I think that so From is very aware of that, and I almost wonder if the fact that they've been so in touch with the player base, that they just know how people play the game so well now, that they're like, oh well, people are gonna try and just strafe around for backstabs because that's OP, and so we're gonna have a shield bash. Where it just like you think that you can just hold your shield up, and it's like, nope, this is gonna destroy you.
In Dark Souls 1 and 2, you all the enemies, like if they use an ability, you have a window to get in there and do something. In Dark Souls 3, that window is very small.
Yeah.
And if you miss your opportunity, or you might think you have an opportunity, they'll say, nope, sorry, and they will shut you down.
Yep.
And even like before you go into the next game cycle, beating the game, I've gone back and I've just been roaming through every zone, combing over everything, trying to find everything. And there's been a couple times where I was just messing around, and some enemies in the early zones, like 3 or 4 shot me.
They'll just wreck you.
And it's just like, the difficulty is there. The
difficulty is definitely.
Yeah. I had some boss, like the boss fights are definitely on Bloodborne's level of difficulty for sure. There's definitely some easy ones, some that I'll probably never die to again unless I'm just screwing around.
Right.
But there's other ones, like I burned through most of the game, and then I got to the end of the game and I realized I was severely underleveled, and there are a couple bosses that I probably tried 100+ times on, and it was just because like my build wasn't perfect and I was dedicated to my build and I didn't want to change it.
I think that the underleveling just kind of happens as a consequence of
being a Souls vet,
playing these games for years and understanding how zones work, and like honestly, like I do try and take my time with zones, but it's like if I'm gonna fight my way through a zone and then I die to like a mob or
you're
whatever,
halfway through it,
and I'm halfway through it, I'm like, well, I'm not gonna.
You're gonna run past that
all
first
the way
half.
back there. I'm just gonna run back. I'm just gonna try and see the items and like, you know. So it was kind of like a combination of doing that and just trying to get the items and get to the boss gate.
Plus, my first playthrough. I don't know about anyone else. Like, I don't consume boss souls. I use them for items. Like, I get as much of them as I can. Is because like my first character, I wanna. He's a loot whore. He's gonna get the platinum achievement, and he's gonna get every freaking item in the game. Like, that's my goal. That way, even if he's super high level, I can always jump on that dude, upgrade a weapon, and try it out, and then decide if it's something I want to do on a character later.
So the difficulty's there. That's all good. Something I definitely want to touch on, the music.
Ooh.
The music is.
We were talking about that today.
On point. The music is excellent. The Firelink Shrine music. So good.
Chilling in a way. Even just the main menu, man.
Also, okay, so you know the boss fight that we're struggling with before the last one?
Yeah.
The music in that boss fight might be my favorite music of any boss fight ever. Except for the Gwyn Lord of Cinder music from the first game.
Yeah. Something about that will always be
special. But that music, it like reminded me of like a badass like anime or something like that. I don't know why, but it was just so rad. I love that music.
FromSoft does a beautiful job of making everything matter. Like somehow I never really put this together, but like no zones have music except for your shrine or hub world and boss fight. Like it's like I did, but I never like took the time to really notice it and be like, wow, like there's no music anywhere.
In Dark Souls 1, it's like a big deal when you get to Ash Lake and you look up at the sky and the music triggers. Yeah. When you look at the sky and it's like, oh, and it's like, oh shit, like it's a zone with music. That's pretty it's pretty gnarly.
Yeah. And like putting thousands and thousands of hours into this franchise, I somehow overlooked that.
That's how you know that it's good design, because you're never like, oh, I wish there was music playing in this zone right now. But then when you walk into a boss room and it's like, dun, dun, and you're just like, oh shit, like it's fucking on.
I'm not for sure about this, but I feel like the music designer from Bloodborne was the same one for this game. Like it had a very similar feel.
I think I read. I could be totally wrong, but I think I read that there are multiple composers that work on this game.
That would make sense. Beautiful music though.
But yeah, the music is excellent. Visually, okay. So now time to get into a couple technical gripes.
Mechanical things.
Well, technical.
The Xbox One struggles a little bit.
The Xbox, well,
it's no PS3 in Blighttown.
It literally runs like
in some areas.
It's in some points it runs just like that.
Yeah.
Like it runs just like certain areas of Dark Souls 1 on the Xbox 360. And to me, like, I don't understand how that's a problem. I guess okay.
It's just a hardware thing, man. They're trying to make the game look as beautiful as they can.
I know they are, but I read also that it was having problems on like very high-end PCs.
That's just optimization, though.
I think it's an optimization thing, but it's just like there's that.
It's like when Dragon Age came out. I have a great PC. I couldn't even play it on my PC because it was bad. And that's why my goal, I'm going to platinum this game or get all the achievements on Xbox One. And then I'm going to do the same thing on PS4. Right. And then I'm basically going to have those systems as fallback for like, hey, my friend who's playing it on this wants to play, so we can do that. But in the end, I will be on that PC life because 60 frames per second is going to be.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get
when we first sat down and we were playing that first night.
It was rough.
We both kind of got a headache for the first hour because it's just like I've been playing Dark Souls 1 on PC in 60 frames. Dark Souls 2, Scholar of the First Sin, 60 frames. All these games in 60 frames. You sit down and it's like a slideshow.
It was rough for a second.
And it takes a while. And eventually through exposure, you don't even realize it. It doesn't bother me.
I'd prefer 60 frames. I get it. Like, honestly, that was my first experience really being disturbed by frame rate.
Yeah.
Like, I'd never ever, people are always like harping about, 60 FPS, blah, blah, blah. And I've always kind of just been like,
well, for a long time, that's all we had, even in
I
PC
get it.
games.
Like, okay, it's like you're just picking something to complain about, but it was pretty noticeable on the Xbox One. I'm curious to see how it runs on PS4 versus Xbox One.
I can't wait.
It might go a little bit smoother,
It's better hardware.
But yeah, so
he keeps checking his phone because the camera that we're using is a very high quality camera, but it only records in like 20-minute segments, 25-minute segments. So we got to make sure that we don't go over because we can't have the catastrophe that happened last week happen again.
So yeah, I mean, with that, I mean, I guess in summarization of the non-spoiler review discussion, the game is excellent, is 100%. Pretty much everything that we were hoping for, that you could possibly ask for from a Souls title.
Yeah.
Music is phenomenal. The new gameplay mechanics work really well.
Weapon diversity, they did a great job in this
There's
game.
a lot of weapon diversity.
It's earlier.
You can really build your character out however you want. And I'm really looking forward to when the EU servers go live and doing some PvP stuff. But yeah, I mean, with that is the conclusion to the spoiler-free section of the podcast. If you do not want spoilers, get out now because it is full spoilers from here on out, guys. All right, guys. So we are now in the spoiler section. Part deux. Spoiler section of the review podcast conversation.
And we kind of want to just like stroll through like the progress of the game.
Starting at the beginning.
Yeah.
So High Wall of Lothric.
That's like the Undeadburg
of this game. And it's okay. First, whoa, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Okay.
Let's take it back.
Back it up.
Let's back it up. The very first zone. The very first, the Cemetery of Ash or whatever it's called.
Right where you start out.
Right where you start out. Okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm not being too much of a fanboy about this whole thing because I'm gonna call this game on some of its bullshit and some of the things that this game does that do annoy me and that do disappoint me a little bit. Like by and large, I love this game and I'm very pleased with it.
If I was gonna review it, I'd probably give it a 9 or upwards.
Yeah, for sure. But like that's not really even important. It's just okay. So first things that annoyed me about the game, you start in that little area and the starting zone is fine. I enjoyed the starting zone. I enjoyed the enemies. I enjoyed the crystal lizard when you find the crystal lizard and it's like holy shit, these little baby crystal lizards got parents.
There are little crystal lizards and they're mad. Too.
Yeah, there are, but the big ones are there, and that's cool.
And they're like little sub-bosses.
That's super cool, and it was just like right at the beginning, too, and that was awesome. But, okay, so you make your way through, you get to Firelink Shrine. It all looks amazing, the music's all good. I like the area, the design of everything. I don't like the fact that it's a hub world. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
The fact that Firelink Shrine is a world you have to warp from, and you warp directly into it has you warp immediately after you start the bonfire. It has a fast travel option to High Wall of Lothric.
It just takes you there.
It just takes you there. How did you did nothing to establish
like why is that where you go first?
Immediately how did you get there? Why do you teleported there instantly?
One thing I can say is I know from things that I've read there's a Reddit page called like Dark Souls 3 JPN.
Yeah.
It's for people who've been playing the Japanese version and the Xbox One English version. If you like spoilers and you want to be part of a community that is super active and great right now, go there. That place is awesome.
I mean, it
is a huge database right now.
I think
But what I'm getting at is it was a very conscious decision by FromSoft to do this hub world like that because in Bloodborne, loading times were bad in the beginning. And the reason they did this is because they can load sections of the game faster. And when you warp back to Firelink Shrine, even if you want to leave Firelink Shrine, there's a fog gate. It loads while you're there. They took some steps to help you there, but in some ways, it diminished the feel of the game. And
that's kind of what I want to get to is like we were saying, the Dark Souls 1 just kind of like chugging away on Xbox 360. But even that game, the entire world, except for a couple like the little side zones or whatever in the DLC, was all there. Like literally,
even the DLC you run there.
Well, no, you go to Ulasil. That's a totally separate zone.
True.
And you go to the Painted World, and that's a totally separate zone.
Yeah.
So besides those things, the whole world is just there. Firelink Shrine is just a place in the world. You start there, and you venture out. And here's the thing: is like I know that they wanted to make these games like more accessible for more people, and I get that, and I understand that.
I think they want their Bloodborne only player base to be able to
come in and play it and enjoy it
and have fun. Yeah,
I really do wish that fast travel wasn't a thing in the very beginning of the game, because I so much enjoyed that aspect of Dark Souls 1. Like, and at the time,
I'm
sometimes
on the opposite end of the spectrum,
at the time, like it's like man, this is like a pain in the ass or whatever. But what it does is it forces you.
Sucks the first
it forces you to get to know the world. That's the part that's challenging. Like me and you were saying, like when you're a Souls vet, you can run through zones and you can dip around enemies and get to the boss gate and pick up the couple items you see or whatever. But when you can't fast travel and you have to do that just to get places, it's like, dude. But the cool thing about that is the whole world, not just little zones, the whole world was so interconnected that you would be in one zone, heading in a direction, take an elevator, and it'd take you to this other zone that you were at like 10 hours earlier, and you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen quite as often or as well in Dark Souls 3.
There's definitely good shortcuts, though.
There's good shortcuts.
But it's just
and there's interconnectivity.
It takes you from the front of the zone to the boss, basically, which is
quite
cool.
The same. Well, and there's also ones that go from zone to zone.
Yeah, but it's not the same thing as like you kick that bridge down at the dragon in Dark Souls 1 and you're like, holy shit, I'm back at this bonfire and I don't have to run past this Black Knight and all these assholes every time. Like,
and that's one gripe I have with the game. Firelink Shrine is a hub world. All of your NPCs.
I love fast traveling, by the way. I'm a bum, and
I like fast traveling too, but
I like it.
I like it too, but I like that you had to earn it, and I think that. And honestly, I don't think the fast traveling I don't think I would mind it so much if Firelink Shrine wasn't a hub world and it made the game seem so segmented.
What if
it makes it feel like Demon Souls
was connected to the Wall of Lothric? Would that change it for you?
Well, because because
Lothric is connected to a lot of stuff,
but also not. You have to take that. Once you beat the boss, you have to use that sign, and then you get lifted. Get lifted down. That's okay. So that gripe out of the way.
Yeah.
I wish the world was more interconnected, and I wish that it was more like Dark Souls 1 in that respect.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how, with the growing technology, that they're not able to reproduce that kind of thing.
I think they were just worried about load times,
5 years,
because people were harsh on Bloodborne load times.
Whatever, Bloodborne did the same thing.
Yeah, it's true.
So what are you talking about? Like,
true.
It did the same thing. It had a hub world. So, but Dark Souls 1 didn't, and that ran. I mean, it was hard for it to run on 360, but it did.
That's one of your gripes.
You know what I mean?
And that's probably would you say that's your biggest gripe?
Probably, yeah.
I've got my gripe. Let's lay it out. We'll get my gripe out. A little too nostalgic. Like, just like I love the new Star Wars movie, it was a little too nostalgic in some ways. Like, they didn't branch out. In this game, there's a couple things where it's like, I wish they would have branched out.
We're in spoilers. We can say whatever. Like,
you pick up the Grass Crest shield. You pick up all these items that it's like are directly from Dark Souls 1, and it's kind of like, how did that happen? Like, isn't this a new cycle? Like, shouldn't the item be a little different?
Right.
That was one of the things that was cool about Dark Souls 2. You get a whole new set of items, and there's barely any throwbacks, you know? Just like weapons, but not like armor and shields as much. But
yeah, they have those like core like elite knight.
Like you have to have Havel's armor. You have to have your elite knight armor. You know, you have to have your Mirakumo,
which I haven't gotten yet.
Yeah.
The elite knight armor, have you?
Yeah.
The blue one, the elite knight armor.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
You can buy it in Firelink Shrine off the Hag after a certain point.
Yeah. I don't know.
But
I don't know if I've had whatever.
So there's
for that to happen for me yet.
In Demon Souls, I fucking hate the Tower of Latria. I hate that area.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks. They brought it back essentially in this game. Like, you go to the dungeon and it is set up the same way, and it plays so similarly. Frustrating to me. Like, why did they have to bring that back? Another thing that they did that was like a little bit too much of a throwback for me is like, and it kind of makes sense, but like you go to Anor Londo, and that's a big deal, and that's a big spoiler. And when I got there, I couldn't believe it. But it's kind of like it's hard for me to line these up, because it's like I thought that Anor Londo ended when I linked the fire in Dark Souls 1.
Why would it? I mean, it didn't end.
I always imagine that when that happens, you get a fiery fucking holocaust and it restarts. Like that's how I've always imagined the ending of the game.
Yeah.
Like, you link the flame, and you're essentially sacrificing yourself to start a new cycle, to start a new world.
Yeah.
And in this game, you kind of get this feeling where it's like, am I time traveling? What's going on?
But that's the thing. Time in Lordran is convoluted. That's the whole thing. Like,
and even by the end of the game, you have these like Bloodborne elements where it's like the sky changes, buildings are kind of warped, and all this stuff, and it's like
what is going on? I mean, it's messing with your reality, and it is weird. And that kind of bugs me too. But the new things that they do bring to the table, I really like. The knight from Kareem, the gargoyle knight, what's his name?
Karim or whatever.
From Kareem or whatever.
Tarkus guy, is that
not Tarkus. The dude who's guarding the other firekeeper chick.
Oh yeah, God, why can't I think of his name?
His armor set is so dope, and I like his whole thing because he's like a totally new. I think, is Kareem a totally new place to the series too, or is that somewhere that they've talked about before?
I think that they've talked about that before.
They might have.
It seemed familiar.
But even still, like they have this like badass like gargoyle armor with this giant hammer and stuff. Looks so good, and it's like brand new to the game. You know what I mean? They didn't have to pull something from an old game and put it in there.
Oh.
Which they might have done a little bit too much in this game. But
I just remembered something else.
What?
The other part of my gripe.
What?
We have a Demon Souls throwback, and they've always been like, Demon Souls and Dark Souls, they're not the same world, even though armor sets look kind of similar and stuff like that. And then you've got Bloodborne. You fucking fight all these mobs in the swamp that look like Vicar Amelia.
I see. You told me about this. I haven't seen that.
Those big, tall, black-looking Vicar Amelia guys that walk around on two legs, they literally are almost the exact same character model. And to me, it's like, were they trolling us when they said that Bloodborne and Dark Souls aren't in the same world? Because when I see that, I'm like, Vicar Amelia is here in Dark Souls. Does that mean that these worlds are intertwined? Like, is Bloodborne like
that's what I'm saying.
Is like the plague,
and I don't
the undead plague manipulated down the line? Like,
well, see, and that's what.
And I don't feel like those worlds should bleed together. And I'm sorry,
really?
I don't mean to cut you off,
no.
but I don't really feel like I want Bloodborne and I want Dark Souls to be separate entities. And I've always felt like Demon Souls led to Bloodborne, Dark Souls 1 led to Dark Souls 2, led to Dark Souls 3, and I've always felt like their worlds were separate. And I get that they have similar design teams, but it's like, when I'm walking through the swamp and I see Vicar Amelia, it's like, it just doesn't feel right to me. It feels like...
It's like reusing...
It felt like laziness to me.
It's like reusing some artistic assets that they had.
Which is cool, but why does the face have to be exactly the same as Vicar Amelia? And why does it have to walk around in the same way?
They're drawing from, but we have a lot we got to get to, but like, they're drawing from their previous works.
But there's also
a normal thing.
They take it even deeper, like, the Outrider Knights, these frosty knights who have been reduced to beasts, and they walk around on all fours.
They have a nod.
They literally they walk just like the werewolves in Bloodborne. They have the same moveset, and it's like, is this referencing the beast plague? Like there are so many lore implications that we will be able to do this podcast for freaking forever.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. There's really a lot to talk about. We're not even gonna be able to get to everything today, but okay. So moving forward from like the starting zone, getting into High Wall of Lothric, that whole zone is awesome.
I love that zone.
That zone is awesome.
Yeah.
I actually like find myself like thinking about like going back there and just playing through there again.
I can't
just to,
wait
like,
to
see
be
if
level
I missed
1
something.
again. Just like, what do I want to do for sure?
Okay, so let's talk about. So I started out basically the character I built, Dex and Intellect. Using sorceries, and I'm rocking a katana. Katanas are fucking... I'm sure that katanas are going to be OP again.
It seems OP. The parry is really good.
The parry is good. I mean, well, okay, so the parry is good.
Bleed is really good now, too. If you have interest in doing a bleed build, try it. It seems really good.
And it scales with luck.
Bleed does.
I think bleed and poison, I think, scale with luck.
And there's also you can infuse a weapon with hollow, and when it's infused with hollow, it scales off your luck instead of off of your
There's so many different infusions in this game. It's
and some people are being hard on them. Like I started as a pyromancer because I like pyromancy. I've always thought it was cool. I was like, I'm gonna start as a pyromancer. I usually start as a quality build and then try other things later. But this time I was like, I'm gonna jump right in. I'm gonna max int and faith, throw some fireballs, minimum requirements, blah de blah de blah. Well, lo and behold, High Wall of Lothric, you pick up a battle axe called Battle Axe of the Deep. And that is the fire longsword. That is the Drake sword of this game. I didn't know it at the time.
Broken.
I just had the requirements to use it, so I was like, let's do this. I never put that battle axe down. I changed the infusion once I got my stats up higher to chaos. They brought back chaos infusions, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's only been a couple bosses that I had to switch my weapon up.
That weapon is so OP that I was like several hours into the game, and I had
Your weapon was
like
+4.
I had upgraded weapons that didn't do as much damage as that weapon did without it being upgraded at all.
Yeah.
It is so overpowered early in the game that it makes no sense. Like it actually like baffles my mind, because like I saw you using it, and it would have made sense to use it. I could have used it too, but it was just like
we wanted to do
different things, but it was just like, why is this one weapon so much more powerful than all the other ones?
But it's also it's the same way when you find that Drake sword, or when you get that fire longsword in Dark Souls 2.
But that fire longsword it's a fire longsword. You know what I mean? Is it +1 when you find it, or is it just it's just fire longsword?
Regular old fire longsword.
See, and I guess it's just a regular old deep.
And from what I've read so far, infusions are really good early, and they fall off late. When your character gets above level 100, I guess buffing is better.
Yeah.
But that also costs an attunement slot, and it takes a decent amount of attunement to get slots in this game. Yeah. Like, you have to have 18 attunement to get 3 slots, and it's like, it feels like a lot of stats.
But yeah, so moving forward from the High Wall of Lothric area, like, so something else I wanted to talk about is the bosses in the game, and how they're like augmentations of like previous souls, like almost every single one.
That's always how it's been.
Right. But a little bit more so this time than I feel like ever. Okay, so the tree, the second boss you fight, whatever, the rotten tree, that's like the bed of chaos kind of.
Oh, it's the rotten. It's like it's the rotten from Dark Souls 2, or like.
No, I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
I thought that's kind of what I got.
I don't think. No, I felt like it was more like the bed of chaos.
See, when I was thinking bed of chaos, when you fight the Demon King, that totally screams bed of chaos to me.
Well, but that Demon King has no resemblance to anything about the boss fight.
But when you kill him, you get the pyromancy bed of chaos vestiges, which absolutely decimates some bosses. But if you start as a pyromancer, there are bosses weak to fire, and you will destroy them.
But what I'm talking about is like, okay, so the bed of chaos was like that tree with all those like roots and stuff, and then it had swinging arms and stuff. It was a terrible boss fight in Dark Souls 1. Yeah. But basically, it was a sedentary tree that was attacking you with like wood, and then the witch was in the middle of it or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then when you fight the cursed rotted great wood or whatever, you're fighting it. It's a tree that's walking around, and then eventually has something that comes out, an arm that comes out of the middle of it.
Yeah, that's growing
true. Something inside of it.
You're right.
And then moving forward from there, Aldrich straight up is Gwendolyn
and Nito,
and I think Nito, because there's
he's the devourer of the gods.
But and I read this one item description that said something about Aldrich and how Aldrich eventually devoured Gwendolyn. So they're actually
as a human being.
Yeah, they're acknowledging
and he consumed people. And
it's not that Gwendolyn is Aldrich. It's that Aldrich consumed Gwendolyn, and I think that Aldrich also consumed Nito. Because
he has a spear.
Well, it's like whatever that the spear thing he's using looks just like him, and then he's got this like at his base is like this core of like bodies and bones and stuff, just like Nito. The boss fight is totally different than fighting Nito, but it like looks like him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it continues with Seath and Osaro or whatever his name is.
That was like a convoluted piece of lore to me. Like it kind of made sense.
I still had no idea. Like there's so much for us to unfold.
Like getting every fucking item on one character and just really starting to pour over those descriptions and get a better idea. There's
still so much that like we have to like unfold as far as like lore wise and lore implications and like. Yeah. But I'm like excited about that. You know what I mean? I'm really excited that we've pretty much played through the game and beaten it. But there's still so much to do and so much to like see and figure out. Yeah. Like I don't in any way, shape, or form feel like the game is like
there's so much I want to talk about now.
Or is like done for me.
And it's like I just got to save some of it, because it's like if we could, I feel like I could sit here and talk for 4 hours.
Yeah, we could talk for a really long time,
and
but
not even cover a tenth of it.
But like, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot that's going into this game. When I finished Bloodborne, I did not feel the way that I feel now. When I finished Bloodborne, I didn't have this like crazy urge to like get back into it immediately, because I feel like I missed out on this or I missed out on that.
It's like your build in Bloodborne for the most part, it's like it's your weapon, but everyone rolls at the same speed. Like it's you lose this RPG feel.
That's another thing I wanted to talk about. Quickstep is officially, in my opinion, Dark Wood Ring 2.0.
Yeah, I can see that because you can put on your fat armor, but then pop your Quickstep and still have your armor.
Even if you don't have fat armor, and because here's
it's a weapon art on like daggers.
It's a weapon art for like smaller weapons. But here's what doesn't make sense: if you're gonna wear heavy armor and be like a heavy build, typically you're gonna wield heavy weapons as well.
Well, it depends. That's like when I do heavy builds, personally, I get a great shield and I use like a broadsword, and my goal is to just poise through things.
Exactly,
and just
but you're not
like
using
crazy.
a little dagger, right?
A broadsword is short.
That it is, but what I'm saying is like the broadsword doesn't have quick
step. But there's also an axe with quick step, and there's probably some other stuff with quick step that we haven't even found yet.
They're all really small arms, and it makes sense. But I would feel silly if I was running through the game as this big knight and all this armor, and I'm holding like one little knife, and I'm like, yeah, this is my character, and I'm gonna quick step around.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a troll build idea.
Even like I'm gonna like level up that thrall axe, and then buff it. And I'm gonna wreck the last boss because the quick step is so good. Like the iframes, I swear it's like doubled. Yeah. Like it is so, but it does take away your mana. And when you expend all of your mana, I think that it has the same amount of iframes as a regular roll would at that point.
Okay.
That's what I think.
Okay.
Because because you can still do the quick step animation and do it, but
even if you're you're out of mana. If you're out of mana, that's just like that comes back from my World of Warcraft days.
Yeah, dude. Even if you're out of mana, you can still do the quick step, but I don't think you have the iframes that you do normally.
Okay.
But it's really fun. It's really cool. I'm enjoying the quick step.
We both want to do strength builds for our next playthrough, just because it's something different than what we did. But we're gonna try different weapons, and that's gonna be fun.
Yeah,
that's gonna be.
I was thinking about doing like strength faith. Or something like that.
Yeah,
like a pure like paladin type dude.
I'm going strength, fucking great shield, giant weapon, and then I'll bust out armor when I can. Like when I played in the beginning, I ran around naked with a battle axe and pyromancies for like 3/4 of the game.
For me, like honestly, and this is gonna be a total experiment. But on my next playthrough, I'm gonna immediately, instead of investing my points into health I'm gonna invest points in health early, but
you gotta get that like 15 health
instead of investing points into like my strength or dex or whatever, I'm gonna invest points in vitality, and I'm gonna rock like the best armor that I possibly can, even if I have to have a fat roll for a little bit or something like that. Like I'm gonna test it because I feel like it's going to be good. I don't know why, but I feel like it's like maybe armor in this game is stronger than it was in the past, and I don't even know. In every Souls game,
I'm always so hesitant to wear armor because I don't feel like it's as good as dodging. But in this game, they did a good job of like, if you have 69.9% of your weight, you still have a medium roll, and the medium, 70, I guess.
You can rock
if you go
70.
over it, yeah. The medium roll is good. I usually can't play with a medium roll. It's just like, it feels crippling to me. I beat a lot of bosses that I was struggling on by switching out my armor to have better resistances, rocking the medium roll, taking less damage, and getting through it.
Yep.
And let me tell you, I wrecked most of the game. And then I got to the last chunk of bosses, and there was one boss that I was distraught. I spent like 4 hours a day for like 3 days trying to fight the boss, struggling, going and leveling up, exploring for a little bit, coming back and trying. I probably tried 120 plus times to beat this boss.
That's kind of where I'm at with
when I finally did,
last boss right now.
It was like probably the most accomplished I've ever felt in any of the Souls games. The closest thing to that was beating the Defiled Watchdog in the Chalice Dungeons in Bloodborne. That was really tough for me, and it took me equally as many tries. And when I finally beat it, it was that same like, when you know you're going to get that last hit and your heart starts beating, and it's like this is Dark Souls.
Should I go for it? Yeah, that's that feeling you get from these games that you don't get from other games. And honestly, like there's so many things we could talk about with this game. Like we could go on for so long.
Oh yeah.
But kind of on a closing note, I want to talk about the cover the cover armor. It like full spoilers, guys. Like you're in spoiler territory.
This is the last boss.
This is the last boss of the game. They put the last boss of the game on the fucking cover.
Yeah.
And it's like, it blew my mind. At first, I didn't even realize it.
I'm not gonna lie.
I fought him like 3 or 4 times, and I didn't even realize that
the last boss has 2 phases. You remove all of his HP, and then when you get to the last phase, he has Gwyn's moveset.
Yep.
And
they even put a couple notes in the music. They don't totally make it the music, but they just add a couple.
They added a
couple familiar notes.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. And you're just like, oh shit. And then he jumps at you with his flaming sword, and it's like that exact same thing.
I was fighting him, and I finished off his health bar, and I remember doing this big sigh, like, I beat the game. And I kind of like I got like really emotional. And then his health bar fills back up, and he pulls out this fucking fiery sword, and you get this Gwyn soundtrack. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I didn't cry like a baby or anything, but it like my eyes watered, and I was like, wow, they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
And like it was just like,
yeah,
it was incredible. And then I died. He did the fucking combo and fire explosion and wrecked me.
Dude, oh my god!
Can't tell you how many times I died to that. Yeah.
It's so unreal.
You get clipped on like the third hit, and you still get wrecked, and it's like
there's seriously so many things we could talk about this game. Like we could go on for so long, but this is a weekly podcast, and we will be back next week with another podcast, talking about more things Dark Souls 3, more things Dark Souls in general. And at that point, we'll be much further along in our Dark Souls 3 careers, anxiously awaiting the EU release of the game to start PvP.
Dang it, I look at my red eye orb with lust.
Oh, I'm going to just wreck people. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to use the katana and just be a fucking scrub like that. And just parry people with the katana's battle art.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's all these crybabies that talk about like the Fume Ultra Greatsword, and they're like, wow, it 2-hits people. It's so OP. I 2-hit people with my Fume Ultra Greatsword in Dark Souls 2 all the time, and no one ever cried OP. But it's like, it's going to be interesting seeing things evolve. But I think we're getting to the end of our time for this little clip here, so.
Yep, we sure are. But yeah, thanks for watching, you guys. We really appreciate it. Check us out on Twitter. That's probably where we're most active. If you want to communicate with us, that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. And if we want to keep things conversational, but if you've got ideas, if you've got things you want us to talk about, make sure you throw them out there. Yeah. We definitely like to.
I love hearing
feedback
from people.
Is great.
If you send me a message on Twitter, I'll respond. Yep. Pretty much instantly. I'm pretty much always on there.
He is on that shit. He's great at it.
But yeah, guys, thanks for watching so much. We'll be back next week with another Soulscast.
You have every Monday, Tuesday off. There's crazy stuff going on at work, but I'm going to start getting Mondays and Tuesdays off as well. Expect content on Mondays or Tuesdays, maybe both. Yeah. Sometimes Wednesday, more. Thursday if real life gets in the way, but we'll get this weekly podcast out. That is the goal. It's gonna happen, guys. But until then, thanks for watching. Thank you so much. Praise the sun. Indeed. Yeah.